On August 19, 1971, at 8:15 p.m., 20-year-old Megan Riley walked out of a tailoring shop in downtown Knoxville, Tennessee. By 9 p.m., she was supposed to be home for dinner with her mother. She never arrived. Early the next morning, deputies found her pale sedan sitting crooked off a narrow road above the Holston River. The driver's door was partly open and the keys were still in the ignition. An unopened can of soda sat on the front seat. Investigators called it a missing adult, not a crime scene. Nearly 50 years later, one forgotten box in a courthouse basement will prove how wrong they were. What crucial detail did everyone overlook on that ordinary night? In 1971, Knoxville felt like a safe city. She worked part-time at the shop and took community college classes. She still lived with her mother, Linda, in a small house on the east side of the city. Her routine was regular. Late shift, drive home, eat dinner, get ready for class the next day. Nothing in her life suggested she was planning to disappear. That is why the car by the river never made sense to her family. The sedan was found less than 7 miles from her home, pointing back toward town. There were no broken windows, no obvious signs of a struggle, no note on the dash. Her purse, with cash still inside, sat on the passenger floor. The soda can had not even been opened. On paper, it looked like a young woman who simply walked away. To the people who knew her, that idea felt impossible. Inside the Knox County Sheriff's Office, the file grew a little thicker. A few witness statements, several Polaroid photographs. There was a short report stamped, "Missing adult, no foul play suspected." The case number, 71 Riley, was written in red ink along the spine. Then it was boxed, taped, and stored in a basement room with dozens of other forgotten names. Decades later, that basement will be emptied and reorganized. A new cold case project will send investigator Daniel Hart downstairs with an assignment. He must pull one old file and see if anything can still be done. He will pick the box with the fading red letters. When he opens it, the past will not match the reports on record. Megan Riley's life in 1971 looked ordinary on paper. She was 20 years old, working part-time at a small tailoring shop on Gay Street in downtown Knoxville. 3 days a week, she took evening shifts after community college classes. On the other days, she helped her mother, Linda, with errands and bills. They shared a one-story house on the city's east side, less than 15 minutes from the river by car. Megan had no criminal record, no history of running away, and no documented mental health issues. Her bank account showed a balance of just under $80, mostly from paychecks and small tips. Phone records, limited in that era, showed calls to classmates and relatives inside Tennessee. She did not have a passport. There was no sign she planned to leave Knoxville, let alone vanish. People who knew her described a strict routine. She left for class around 8 a.m., worked on campus until noon, then came home for a quick meal. On days she worked at the shop, she left again around 2:30 p.m. and usually walked through her front door by 9:15 p.m. It was the same rhythm week after week. No sudden changes appeared in that pattern in the weeks before August 19th. Church also played a steady role in her week. Megan attended services at Riverbank Baptist Church on Sundays and helped with choir practice on Monday nights. Linda liked knowing her daughter was often at church or at work instead of at bars or parties. Records show Megan volunteered at a food drive that summer and helped teach younger women hymns during small group meetings. There were hints of pressure behind that calm surface. A coworker later told investigators that Megan had complained once about a church leader who paid too much attention to her after choir. She did not name him in that casual comment. At the time, no one wrote it down. To detectives in 1971, she was just a reliable young woman with a simple life and a close bond with her mother. For viewers who follow long unsolved cases, consider subscribing so you do not miss how this file comes back to life. One man at Riverbank Baptist would remember Megan's routine better than anyone else. On Thursday, August 19th, 1971, Megan Riley's last known evening began in a routine way. She clocked in at the tailoring shop on Gay Street at 2:32 p.m. The owner later told detectives she spent the afternoon hemming uniforms and pressing dress shirts. A handwritten schedule shows her assigned to close the front counter that night. Nothing unusual was noted on the sheet. Shortly after 7:45 p.m., the shop's last customer left. Megan swept the floor, wiped down the counter, and locked the front door from the inside. The owner remembered her folding her light work smock into a canvas bag and changing into a short denim jacket. At 8:07 p.m., according to his statement, he turned off the main lights and watched her step out to the sidewalk with her bag and keys. Her pale sedan was parked in a metered spot around the corner. Witnesses said traffic on Gay Street was light. A neighbor recalled seeing Megan unlock the driver's door and place her bag on the front seat. She pulled away from the curb a few minutes after 8:10 p.m., heading northeast toward the Holston River and her home on the east side. The route from downtown to her street passed a small independent gas station on Magnolia Avenue. Records from the station were limited, but the night clerk, interviewed days later, remembered a polite young woman who came in around 8:20 p.m. to buy a cold soda and $2 of gas. He said she mentioned getting home to eat with her mother. That detail never changed in any of his later statements. What did change was his memory of who stood near her car. In his first interview, he barely mentioned anyone else. A week later, he recalled a tall man by the payphone, wearing a blue work shirt with white paint on the collar. He said the man walked toward Megan's sedan while she was paying. The clerk did not hear raised voices or see a struggle. He watched the sedan's headlights pull out toward the river and disappear. From the tailoring shop to the gas station, and then onto that narrow road. Every stop on Megan's route seemed clear on paper, except for the part where she vanished. When Megan Riley did not walk through the front door by 9:30 p.m., Linda Riley noticed right away. At first, she told herself there was traffic or a late customer at the shop. By 10:30 p.m., the food on the stove had gone cold. The small clock on the kitchen wall showed 11:12 p.m. when Linda finally picked up the phone and called the tailoring shop. No one answered. She tried two of Megan's classmates next. Neither had seen her since the afternoon. There was no second number to call for the gas station. By midnight, the house was still silent. Linda stepped out onto the front porch more than once and looked toward the road, listening for a car that never came. At 12:40 a.m., she called the Knox County Sheriff's Office. The night dispatcher took the information and suggested she wait until morning in case Megan had stayed with a friend. Linda did not sleep. At 4:50 a.m., she called again. This time her voice was described as shaking and hoarse in the call log. At 5:07 a.m., the dispatcher wrote a short line on a paper form. Mother reports 20-years-old daughter missing. Last seen leaving work 8 p.m. No history of runaway. That note started the official timeline of the case. Sheriff Leonard Briggs was at home when the second call came through. He arrived at the Riley house around 5:40 a.m. His report notes a small one-story residence, front door unlocked, no signs of forced entry. Megan's bedroom was neat. The bed had not been slept in. Her shoes were lined up under a chair. A half-completed homework assignment lay open on the desk. Briggs asked Linda to walk him through the previous day hour by hour. She repeated the same simple story. Megan had left for work with her canvas bag and car keys. She was supposed to call if she stayed late. She had not called. When Briggs asked if Megan might have left town with someone, Linda shook her head and said no. That answer never changed in any later interview. Back at the sheriff's office, Briggs unfolded a road map of Knoxville and the surrounding county. He marked the tailoring shop, the gas station on Magnolia Avenue, the Riley home, and the stretch of road along the Holston River. He wrote one more line at the bottom of the page. Begin search at first light, check river pull-offs. On the list of people to notify that morning, he added a final name from the church contact sheet. At 7:10 a.m. on August 20th, 1971, the first search team left the Knox County Sheriff's Office. 2 patrol cars, 1 unmarked sedan, and a pickup carried deputies, a fire crew, and 2 volunteers. Their first assignment was clear. Check every pull-off along the Holston River between downtown and the Riley home. By 7:45 a.m., they reached a narrow gravel turnoff just off a county road above the river. A firefighter in the lead truck saw something pale through the trees and signaled to stop. When the deputies walked closer, they recognized Megan Riley's sedan. It sat crooked in the mud, front end angled toward the riverbank, rear wheels sunk slightly. The driver's door was not fully shut. The window was rolled halfway down. The keys were still in the ignition. On the front passenger seat sat a canvas work bag with a folded smock, a small wallet, and coins. An unopened bottle of soda lay next to it, still capped. There was no broken glass, no obvious damage to the car, and no blood visible on the seats. Sheriff Leonard Briggs arrived minutes later. His report notes that the interior looked undisturbed. Megan's purse was on the floorboard with cash inside. Her registration and insurance were in the glove compartment. The car radio was off. The gear shift was in park. On the surface, it looked like someone had stopped the car and stepped out calmly. The ground around the sedan told a different story. In the damp soil, deputies could see at least 2 sets of shoe impressions. One appeared smaller, possibly from a woman's shoe, leading from the driver's door toward the trailing. Another was deeper and larger, with a wider stride, crossing behind the car and down toward the river. No one measured them or placed evidence markers. A young deputy took a few quick Polaroids and slid them into his pocket. As more volunteers arrived, the small turnout filled with footsteps and tire ruts. Curious neighbors walked down from the road to watch. Within an hour, the original tracks were hard to separate from all the new ones. When Briggs asked for a mud sample to be saved, a sergeant reminded him there was no budget to send it to a lab without proof of a crime. By noon, the car had been towed back to the sheriff's garage, and whatever story the ground could have told was gone. In the sheriff's garage behind the Knox County building, Megan Riley's sedan was parked under a dim light the afternoon it was found. Mud still clung to the wheel wells and lower doors. The smell of damp soil and gasoline hung in the air. Sheriff Leonard Briggs stood with 2 deputies and a young technician whose only tools were a Polaroid camera, envelopes, and a notepad. They started with the driver's side. The seat was pushed farther back than Linda said her daughter ever drove. The steering wheel was tilted upward. On the floor mat, there was a thin layer of dried mud, heavier near the pedals. Briggs noted a faint scuff on the plastic under the dashboard, but no one took a close-up photograph. They had only a few shots left in the camera. On the rear floor, behind the driver's seat, the technician saw a clear shoe impression in dried mud. It showed a deep tread pattern, wider than a typical women's shoe, roughly a men's size 10. He pointed it out. Briggs told him to photograph it and scrape some of the mud into an envelope. When he reached for evidence bags, he realized they had none stocked in the garage. A deputy suggested using scrap paper. The technician wrapped a small amount of mud in notebook paper, wrote the date and case number on it, and slipped it into his shirt pocket. There is no record of that packet ever entering the official evidence log. Inside the car, there were more small details that did not fit a simple runaway theory. A shallow scratch marked the inside of the driver's door, near where someone's hand might grab to pull it shut. There were 3 short marks on the plastic near the window crank, like something hard had dragged across it. None of those areas were dusted for prints. The last item went almost unnoticed. A folded white handkerchief with a blue stitched border lay on the back seat. Linda later said Megan owned one like it, a gift from a church member after choir practice. The report only mentioned it once, in a single vague line. Decades later, that forgotten scrap of cloth would become the most important object in the entire file. In the days after Megan Riley's car was found, Sheriff Leonard Briggs moved from the riverbank back to the interview room. The first person he called in was the night clerk from the Magnolia Avenue gas station. Carl Donovan was 25, thin, and nervous. On August 21st, 1971, he repeated his basic story. A young woman bought soda and gas around 8:20 p.m., said she had to get home to eat with her mother, and then drove off toward the river. He signed the written statement without changes. Briggs pressed him about anyone else in the lot. At first, Carl mentioned only a pickup near the air pump. In a follow-up interview a week later, he added a detail he had not said before. A tall man stood by the payphone, wearing a dark blue shirt with faint white stains on the cuffs. Carl said he saw the man glance toward Megan's sedan as she stepped away from the counter. When asked why he left that out the first time, Carl said he was tired and did not think it mattered. The shop owner from Gay Street confirmed that Megan left work on time, carrying her bag. He denied any conflicts with her and said she had never mentioned plans to leave Knoxville. Megan's ex-boyfriend provided an alibi supported by library staff at the University of Tennessee. None of those early interviews gave Briggs a clear suspect. One name did appear more than once in casual comments. Members of Riverbend Baptist told deputies that Reverend Edwin Cole took a special interest in Megan's singing and often praised her after choir. On August 24, 1971, Briggs interviewed Cole at the church office. Cole said he had seen Megan at services the Sunday before she disappeared and described her as devout and steady. He claimed that on the night in question, he was at home preparing a sermon. What stands out in the file is how helpful he tried to appear. Cole offered to organize prayer circles, joined search volunteers at the river, and later brought food to the Riley home. He also reported finding a small white handkerchief near the water's edge during the first day of searching. His name appears in the report only as a cooperative pastor. Years later, investigators would go back to that early interview and ask a simple question about the handkerchief that no one raised in 1971. Confusion inside the Knox County Sheriff's Office started almost as soon as Megan Riley's car was towed in. Some deputies believed they had the start of a homicide. Others saw only a stalled sedan and an adult who might have left by choice. The file from those first weeks reads like two different cases trying to exist in the same folder. On August 22, 1971, Sheriff Leonard Briggs held a short briefing. One detective argued they should treat the river turnout as a crime scene and lock it down. Another pointed out there was no body, no obvious weapon, and no sign of forced entry. The only solid facts were a missing 20-year-old, a parked car, and vague shoe impressions in the mud that were already ruined. The interview statements did not make things clearer. Gas station clerk Carl Donovan shifted from "no one else in the lot" to "a tall man in a blue shirt" near the payphone. The timestamps in his statements changed by 10 to 15 minutes. Briggs noted "possible memory issue" in the margin instead of marking him as unreliable or key. Reverend Edwin Cole's timeline also raised quiet questions. Church logs showed choir practice ending at 7:30 p.m. on the night Megan disappeared. In his first interview, Cole said he went home around 8 and stayed in for the night. A week later, he added that he had stopped by the river the next morning to pray with volunteers before the sheriff's team arrived. No one confronted him with the time conflict. Behind closed doors, Deputy Mark Ellis told Briggs he felt something was wrong. He had seen Cole at the river turnout before the search tape went up. Ellis claimed he watched the pastor walk from the direction of the water, holding a folded white cloth. That detail never made it into the official report. Administrative pressure soon followed. At a weekly county meeting, a supervisor asked Briggs how long they planned to devote resources to a missing girl with no signs of foul play. Briggs recorded that comment in a private notebook, not in the file. 2 weeks later, the official classification on the cover sheet changed from suspicious missing person to missing adult, no foul play suspected. One short phrase quietly pushed every darker theory off the table. After the Megan Riley file was reclassified as a simple missing adult, public attention faded fast. In October 1971, the Knoxville News-Sentinel printed a short item noting there were no new developments in the case. By the end of the year, there were no more mentions. For most people in the city, Megan became another photograph on a bulletin board that someone eventually took down. Inside the sheriff's office, the evidence was reduced to one cardboard box. The sedan was returned to Linda Riley and later sold as scrap when it stopped running. The mud on its floorboards went with it. In the basement storage room, a clerk wrote "Case 71 Riley" in red ink on the box's side and slid it onto a metal shelf with dozens of others. That label was the only thing separating Megan's name from complete erasure. In the late 1970s, a plumbing leak flooded part of the storage area. Several older case files were ruined and thrown away. The Riley box survived because it had been moved to a higher rack during a quick cleanup. A trainee later added a pencil note on the lid. "Old missing girl, river." No one opened it to see what was inside. Outside the sheriff's building, other clues were forming that no one connected. In 1973 and 1975, 2 young women involved in church activities in nearby counties were reported missing after evening events. In both files, local reports described abandoned cars near water, personal items left inside, and no clear suspect. Those cases were handled by different offices and never compared to Megan's. Years later, internal church records would show that complaints about Reverend Edwin Cole's behavior had been quietly discussed among leaders. Anonymous letters described private counseling sessions with adult women that made them uncomfortable. A 1976 memo from a regional board recommended that concerns be managed within the church family. No copy of that memo ever reached law enforcement. By 2019, Tennessee had launched a statewide effort to review long unsolved disappearances. Investigators were given lists of cases that matched certain patterns, including vehicles left near rivers. When investigator Daniel Hart scanned his list from Knox County, one familiar name from Riverbend Baptist appeared more than once in the notes column. In early 2020, investigator Daniel Hart walked into the Knox County basement with a list of old files to pull. One of the numbers was 71 Riley. The cardboard box he found had a faded red label and a pencil note on the lid. Old missing girl, River. Inside, he saw exactly 3 pieces of physical evidence. A folded white handkerchief in a brittle plastic sleeve. 6 Polaroid photographs from the river turnout and the sheriff's garage. A small envelope with a brown hair stuck to a flake of dried mud. Hart wore gloves and read the original inventory sheet. The handkerchief was listed only as cloth item with blue border. No DNA testing had ever been done. The hair sample had never left the county. There was no lab report attached. In the 1970s, that evidence was little more than a note. In 2020, it was something else. It was testable. He sent the handkerchief swab and the hair to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation lab in Nashville with a rush tag for the cold case project. Weeks later, the first report came back. The cloth carried 2 DNA profiles. One was female, the other was male. The hair produced a full female profile. Hart compared it to a voluntary sample from Linda Riley, taken years earlier as part of a missing persons update. It matched at 99.999%. The hair on that envelope had belonged to Megan. The male DNA from the handkerchief did not hit any open profile in the national database. That forced Hart to look back at the old paperwork. One name, Reverend Edwin Cole, kept appearing. He was the man who found the handkerchief by the water. He led early search prayers. His name also appeared in church notes near 2 other disappearances in nearby counties. Hart requested digital scans of the original Polaroids. A state imaging specialist enhanced one riverbank photo. In the background, behind the search volunteers, a tall man stood close to the sedan, wearing a white shirt and a dark watch on his wrist. A caption on the back, written in 1971, read only, Cole with volunteers. With the DNA mixture, the timeline issues, and the image, Hart asked a county judge for a warrant to collect a fresh DNA sample from Reverend Cole, now an elderly man living in a small town outside Knoxville. In November 2020, officers served the warrant on Reverend Edwin Cole at his small brick house outside Knoxville. He was 72, thin, and walked with a slight limp. He allowed technicians to take a buccal swab without protest. According to Hart's notes, Cole asked only one question. He wanted to know whether this had something to do with that girl from the river. 3 weeks later, the TBI lab sent its report. The male DNA on Megan Riley's handkerchief matched Cole's profile at a probability of 1 in hundreds of trillions. There was no reasonable chance of random similarity. Hart carried the file to the district attorney's office. The DA agreed to open a formal homicide review, but one major problem remained. There was still no body. That changed when Hart confronted Cole in a recorded interview at the sheriff's office. Hart laid out the DNA results, the choir schedule, and the enhanced Polaroid placing Cole at the river turnout before officers arrived. For several hours, Cole denied harming Megan. Then he made one statement that shifted the case. He said Megan was where the river bends and joins itself, a phrase he had never used before in any prior record. Hart and a forensic team used old maps of the Holston to pinpoint a confluence area downstream from the original turnout. Ground-penetrating radar and careful excavation in early 2021 uncovered partial remains, clothing fragments, and a damaged wristwatch consistent with what Linda had described. Later DNA testing confirmed the remains were Megan's. With a body, a clear cause of death, and the handkerchief DNA, the DA presented the evidence to a Knox County grand jury. In May 2021, the grand jury returned an indictment charging Edwin Cole with first-degree murder and kidnapping. Defense counsel immediately filed motions arguing that the delay violated Cole's rights and that memories were too old to trust. The judge denied those motions, citing the strength of the physical evidence. Jury selection began in November 2021 in a high-security courtroom. Potential jurors were questioned about their views on clergy, cold cases, and forensic science. When the panel was finally seated, 12 strangers were asked to decide what really happened on that river road 50 years earlier. The trial of Edwin Cole began in January 2022 in Knox County Criminal Court. For 10 days, The jury heard a case that should have been tried in 1971. Prosecutors focused on physical evidence and timelines. Defense attorneys tried to turn the clock itself into a weapon. Forensic experts testified first. The TBI analyst explained the DNA mixture on the handkerchief. One profile belonged to Megan Riley. The other belonged to Edwin Cole, confirmed by his buccal swab. The odds of a random match were effectively zero. Another expert described the recovered remains, the wristwatch, and the soil that matched the Holston floodplain. The message was simple. Megan had not left Knoxville. She had died there. Then came the early paperwork. Jurors saw the original, no foul play suspected, note signed in 1971. They saw how the only physical evidence had been boxed and ignored. Former Deputy Mark Ellis, now retired, testified that he saw Cole at the river turnout before the scene was secured. He described the folded white cloth in Cole's hand. Back then, he said nothing because his supervisor warned him not to go after a pastor without a body. Cole chose to testify. He denied killing Megan but admitted touching the handkerchief. He said he had picked it up to protect her modesty when he found it on the ground. When asked why he never reported that detail, he answered that the past belongs to God. His story shifted under cross-examination. He could not keep his own timeline straight. In closing arguments, the state told the jury that science had filled the gaps left by fear and deference. The defense warned against trusting old memories and new machines, but offered no alternative explanation for the DNA, the map, and the confluence location. After 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a guilty verdict on all counts. The judge sentenced Cole to life in prison without parole. Outside the courthouse, some former church members still insisted he was innocent. Others apologized publicly to the Riley family for trusting a title over a mother's fear. Investigator Daniel Hart later said the verdict did not fix 1971, but it proved something larger about who gets to close a case.